Hi everybody, my name is Christina Manis. This is the WOMANosphere podcast. I'm a licensed pharmacist. I am a wellness coach, a yoga instructor. I own a little wellness center, and if you hear some background noise right now, that's my puppy. I'm a dog mom, I'm a cat mom, that's right. But you know what? The credentials don't matter. Right now what matters is that I'm a ordinary, middle-aged, working American woman, and I'm doing this podcast to help us all come together so that we can all leverage our right to succeed, and we can all recognize that there's room for everybody to succeed. So this week's episode is called, Is That True? So one of the things that I have observed, and this is not me being a Linda or a Karen, this is not about high-minded morals and thinking that, I'm better than anybody else. This is about a loss of something in our culture here in America, and it's the loss of truth. And so from time to time on this podcast, what's going to happen is I'm going to do little segments called, Is That True? And we will use artificial intelligence, who has no stake in the game, really. Artificial intelligence is not going to get emotional about giving answers based on statistics. So I think one way that this is good to speak to women my age and older, and even some women who are in their 40s, using AI is important. Don't get left behind. So that's an important part of the conversation, and that'll be an episode in and of itself. But is that true is something that hopefully we can bring back into our society in terms of fact checking and also asking each other that question. Because one of the things that I'm seeing as a middle-aged adult is middle-aged adults lying. Like, just straight up lying. And people older than me, baby boomers, Gen Xers, my generation, baby boomers, people older than me, lying. Just not being able to tell the truth about the basics. It is such a childish behavior. And what I have noticed, because I'm an existentialist, right? I'm thinking about, why do humans do what we do? Why is it so bad in America right now where we cannot tell the truth from a lie? And this started back, I'm going to say, in the 80s with, dare I say, like, just the whole greed and the culture of television and celebrity was really getting pumped up in the 80s, right? And so a superficial set of values started to really come in. And this was when I was young, right? So I would see adults in the community like having affairs and the lying, even the teachers. It was like shocking, right? Because these are our elders, and we're like, what the fuck? Like, grown-ass parents and neighbors and teachers and people in the community just lying all the time. And so that was something that had been happening prior to my generation becoming the adults. But where my generation didn't pick up is that we may have tried to call our parents out, or we may have internally known that we were being lied to quite a bit, and that was very frustrating for my generation. And my generation was the generation of like latchkey kids, like people were just starting to get divorces when I was young. And in fact, I was 12 when my parents got a divorce, and we were like one of the only families that was a broken home at that time in a small community. Like, it's crazy because now that same small community, I mean, at least half of the marriages there are divorces, right? And at least half of the kids that go to school in that city are of single parents. So it's really strange that things have changed so fast in terms of even that, relationships being able to survive and stay together, people being bold enough to go out and get divorces. But one of the things that didn't change with my generation was we didn't change the behavior of lying. What I've seen with my peers and colleagues and, people in my age group, even that are parents, is that one of the things we've seemed to accept is like this. Do you ever have that friend where you can cancel on them because they're so flaky with you? And so you don't, or you can be late with them because they're going to definitely be late with you. And so they're not going to call you out on your bad behavior because it's their bad behavior too. And I can see how this plays into how we do roll our eyes at people that expect honesty. Like, you have that friend that's kind of like the honest person in the group, and they're kind of like that perfect person. And you might feel a little bit guilty lying to them, but you'll still do it. But the person in your group who also lies a lot, you wouldn't feel guilty lying to them. We have to be asking ourselves constantly, is that true? Right? On any given day, with anything we might read in the headlines, the media is a huge problem. So from time to time here, I'll be taking something that I see in the headlines and bringing it onto the podcast to say, like, is that true? But the point of this podcast today is that, even with myself, I had said I'm going to drop these podcasts every Sunday. Well, yesterday I couldn't do it. It's late Monday. It's almost evening. It is evening time now. So I'm late getting a podcast out for this week. There are going to be some weeks probably that it doesn't happen on a Sunday or maybe at all that week. So I even have to understand that adjustments can be made as long as I'm honest and authentic about what I'm doing here. We've got to become a generation of truth. We have to bring truth back, because what we're doing is we're setting up the younger generations for just a failure. We have done this because we've allowed the wealth gap to get so big now that we've really taken away that American dream in so many different respects from the people in the country now. Whereas when we were kids, we were brought up on the government has checks and balances. We were brought up on a lot of stories about American history that may not have been 100% accurate, but what we thought we had was the melting pot. We thought we had equal opportunities to succeed, and we were, told that anybody could succeed, and we were encouraged to have good work ethic, and so we were being prepped, right, in a way that we felt like if we followed those rules, we would come out of this being successful in our adult life. And then we became adults, and all of a sudden, none of this that we were taught is true at all. We see fascism and corporate fascism and lobbying money from big corporations, and so the people who have the money can actually pay to have laws created that benefit them and their businesses. And so then we end up having people like Elon Musk, who will be now the first trillionaire. That should not be happening on this planet, where people are starving and we don't have health insurance for, a lot of Americans, like millions of Americans don't have health insurance and can't afford it. And we bankrupt people when they don't have health insurance and they become ill or injured in an accident. It's really crazy how we put money before humanity. And so these things could have been helped along the way had my generation cared about the truth and about values. We got lost in the superficial stuff, like the magazines and the advertising and the need to be skinny and beautiful. And then the 90s was fun, and we did have a good economy at that time, and we weren't really pressed hard to think about a lot of the deeper issues. So if you didn't somehow think about, your own personal growth or spirituality on your own, you probably weren't going to be influenced that way from the broader media. We were sort of more influenced by, first in the 80s, like the Jerry Springer stuff, which is so distasteful. And then in the 90s, it was like Seinfeld and Friends, which was on the other side just so innocent and fun. And so we weren't pushed really hard to think about, well, what happens if this wealth gap thing becomes an issue? What happens if we actually lose our democracy somehow? What happens if it becomes an oligarchy? What happens when, like, we can't really survive as local business owners anymore, and we can't be self-employed because the entire system is rigged against that? And it is now. And so it doesn't really matter what side of any political coin you're on. It's just, this is the way the system is at the moment. And so the only way that we're going to be able to all have a chance to succeed and kind of take care of one another is to take care of one another. We need to have a certain sense of even like wealth equality to be able to succeed as an individual. So we're all on the same playing field. We're all on the same team, right? It's Team America. And so we should be demanding better of our leaders. We should be demanding better of our media. And I think we know this, but we can't come together enough to want to do that because we're so fragmented by all of the misinformation. We don't have a solid basis for truth anymore. So one of the things I found myself doing that was really helpful for me and eye-opening is just asking AI. For example, I asked AI during my lifetime, like, when was the economy the best? Which, like, presidential administration had the best economy during my lifetime? And, like, which administration had the highest approval rating per average of their time in office during my lifetime? And so it actually was the same president that both had the best economy and the best approval rating, which does make sense. However, it was a surprise to me who the person was, right? So because of everything that I've been told by my own culture, I had maybe other beliefs or ideas about what I was going to hear in response. And so I asked some other questions going back 100 years, different questions of things that I truly just was curious about. I'm embarrassed to say that some of the most famous presidents, I had no idea if they were Republicans or Democrats. And that doesn't matter to me. They were famous for one thing or another. I wanted to ask some questions to just become more educated. So some of the things that I found out, I was surprised, and a lot of the stuff I just didn't know to begin with, so I didn't know what to expect. So when you start to actually fact check, AI is faster than when we used to have to rely on Google. I remember trying to fact check something that President Obama said, like back in when he was president, right? At the end of his presidency. And like there were people online, and I was a journalist at that time. I had my own magazine. And so there were people online, other journalists that were challenging what I was saying. And I said, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to find these documents. And they were basically court documents. And then I'll post them. Just give me a little time. Well, it literally took me 3 hours. And I did come up with the proper documents to prove my side of the argument. However, if I would have had AI capabilities back then to just get on the, Chat GPT or something else of that sort, whatever search engine that I was using then was probably Google. It didn't have AI capabilities. So it took 3 hours. Now I could probably find something like that using AI in 20 minutes. It's not going to be able to read court documents for me, but it would have been able to point me in a direction much faster than me having to click through a lot of different things. And it could have probably given me links much faster instead of me going through a couple of hours of trying to find the proper places to find these documents. So I say all that to say this is that the truth is right there, especially when it comes to statistics and things that cannot be fabricated, right? It's there, it's accessible. Use AI to help you find the truth when somebody tells you something and you don't know if it's true. Instead of just believing them because they're your friend or they're in a certain social group that you want to be a part of, look it up. Why not look it up? Or if something sounds off to you, or you kind of know that somebody is not telling you the right information, why not just ask them, is that true? And you don't have to be confrontational. Just, is that true? Because that will stop somebody in their tracks and make them think about whether or not it is. They will not on the spot maybe be accountable if they're absolutely lying and they know that it's not true, but it's going to be a slightly more compassionate approach to calling somebody out than saying, I know that that's not true, or than saying, you're a liar. Believe me, there are a lot of times when I would love to tell people, you're a liar. Like, you lied and got caught and then sidestepped it, like didn't even admit it, weren't even accountable. Because this happens so frequently now to me in the course of just regularly trying to get to know a new person in my life, a friend, a colleague, a peer. And like, some people are very open and honest, and it is so great. And you can tell honesty, you can feel it. The truth feels different, it sounds different, it just resonates. You can also tell when somebody is not being truthful, or when they have an agenda, or when they're only telling you a piece of the truth, or when they're hiding something. So you can feel that about people. And just one of the things, again, that is just so surprising is the amount of people in my age group and older who still feel comfortable just lying. And it's interesting because nobody calls anybody out. But I guarantee you most of us can tell when another adult is lying. And we might not ever rat them out to a friend or whatever. We might keep it a secret too, that we know that we were lied to by this person. Or we might tell everybody. But in either case, we know that we were lied to. And so that person isn't really getting away with anything. So why are there so many people in my generation and older who are willing to make themselves look like fools like that? Because it really does make the adult who is lying look so childish and immature, and really makes that person look like a fool. And all we're doing is not calling them out to save face because we're being compassionate to them. And so there is a lot more forgiveness and compassion in the world than I think we want to believe. But the reason we extend that forgiveness and compassion to people who are dishonest is because A, we either don't like confrontation, or B, we know that we lie too, so we're not going to be the one to call out somebody else. It justifies our position as being dishonest whenever we are. We just tend to think, well, everybody lies. Well, I'm not going to call that person out because everybody lies. And that just becomes something that we accept. But then we have that in corporations and in business deals and in contracts and in legal matters, things that really do matter. Now, lies can be everywhere and anywhere with no accountability. And so that has worked against us, and that is going to work against our success as individuals and as a greater collective. We have to bring truth back around, if only just to survive and thrive as a culture, as a country, as a species. And cooperation and truth and integrity and honesty are going to get us a lot further, because that's the creative phase of life, than the destructive phase, which is just the violence and the wars and the abuse and the dishonesty and the theft and the horrendous, inhumane actions of people who are wealthy, who don't care about those that are starving. And how there are so many people in power that are inhumane, and there are so many people who are not in power, who feel powerless and helpless and hopeless to do anything about their position in life, which may be that they have no resources and they literally are starving. Or maybe it is just somebody that's like a lower middle class person in our first world country who is living paycheck to paycheck and just barely making it, and life is so stressful for that person that they don't have a good quality of life. So these are issues that we can resolve by coming together, but a big part of that is starting to identify the truth and starting to ask that question. Is that true? Is that true? Is it true? Starting to ask that question, starting to get the answers for yourself, starting to think for yourself, starting to be authentic. Having integrity feels great. Being honest feels great. So if you really want to know, fact check it. Use AI. It's there for you to use. It's there anyway. You may as well use it for the forces of good. And you may as well use it with good intentions, right? Okay, until next time, be well. Thanks for listening.